I love LEGO Atlantis. To celebrate its 15th year anniversary, I dedicated the past year of my life to creating the ultimate Portal of Atlantis custom LEGO build, and I'm finally ready to show it off in its fullest for you all today. Containing more than 20,000 pieces, measuring a cubic meter, with over 120 lights, a built-in screen, separating into 26 modules, and featuring every single minifigure and all 6 keys from the LEGO Atlantis line, and odes to many legendary Atlantis sets and so many LEGO underwater themes of the past. This is my love letter to one of the best LEGO themes of all time, LEGO Atlantis. For the uninitiated, LEGO Atlantis launched in January of 2010 and continued the decades-old trend of underwater LEGO adventurers scouring for treasure and battling creatures of the deep. Between its 3 waves of sets, striking red submersibles, recognizable crustaceans, the infamous Cartoon Network movie, and the lack of fantasy deep-sea exploration sets after the end of the theme, LEGO Atlantis has left an incredible lasting impact all these years later. Like I said, I absolutely adore LEGO Atlantis, but as a kid, I'd always imagined the Atlantis theme to be so much more grandiose than the 23 retail sets we ended up receiving. But that's not a bad thing. In my opinion, only the best LEGO themes are capable of inspiring others to continue to create, to build ships and creatures and scenes of their own, and to fully embrace their own stories within these worlds. Now that I'm an adult and lucky enough to have some extraneous funds and time for my hobbies, I spent a stupid amount of money and so many LEGO building evenings to bring my vision of LEGO Atlantis to life. I couldn't be more proud of this project, and I can't wait to give you all an in-depth look at it. Before we dive headfirst into my Portal of Atlantis MOC, I thought it would be all the more impactful if I discussed the history of LEGO Atlantis and explored the underwater themes of years past. I've done heaps of research on these themes and can guarantee you'll learn something new, but if you'd rather skip this whole charade and get your eyes on this big ol' custom build, you can jump to this point in the video. And now I present to you the grand tale of these legendary underwater themes and the history of LEGO Atlantis. The year is 1995, and LEGO is releasing its 5th, brand new LEGO system theme. Town, Castle, and Space had been successfully pumping out sets since 1978, and Pirates had enamored fans since 1989. Where could LEGO possibly go from here? How about under the water? LEGO's first fantasy underwater exploration theme was Aqua Zone. Piloting the iconic yellow submersibles are not the Aquazoners or the Aquazonians. The heroic crystal miners in this series are known as Aquanauts, and I guess they're hanging out within the confines of said Aquazone. The Aquanaut sub-theme included submarines of many different sizes, as well as the large Neptune Discovery Lab as a base of operations. Contrasting with the yellow and black ships are blue and white diver minifigures, who served as the main protagonists for the first 2 years of the Aquazone theme. That being said, the Aquanauts were not living alone in the Aqua Zone. Competing for control of the crystal mines was another faction, the Aqua Sharks. These villain divers did nothing particularly villainous besides having black and blue ships and frequently sporting neon orange canopies with evil shark printing on them, and hanging out with super scary creatures of the deep. Compared to the Aquanauts, the Aqua Sharks have some very slick ships in my opinion. A couple of the Aquazone sets have fairly chunky, oddly shaped subs, but that's coming from someone who really has no nostalgia for these sets that came out years before I was born. These 2 factions were locked in battle for 2 years over the underwater crystals, but triumphing the Aquazone was neither the Aquanauts nor the Aqua Sharks, but rather the Aqua Raiders. Although their ships might not look it, these are the peaceful Aqua Raiders, the tranquil Aqua Raiders, with no enemies to be seen. Just look at those big old smiles on Scavenger Sam and Rocky the Reef Wrecker's faces. Those gents absolutely loved mining, tricking their ships out with pre-Rock Raiders drills, outfitted with random gears and chromed arrows in their place. During the entirety of 1997, only these 3 green, black, and trans-neon green ships were released in the Aquazone line, and those 3 ships were the only part of Aqua Raiders, Aquazone's shortest lived sub-theme. In 1998, a brand new battle brewed in the Aquazone, this time between the Hydronauts and the Stingrays. Everywhere outside of America, the Hydronauts went by a different name, the Aquanauts. Again, I do think the new name for this faction in the US was quite valid, as these sets certainly set themselves apart from the Aquanaut sets of old. Instead of transparent blue and trans-neon orange parts contrasting the yellow machinery, the Hydronauts sported transparent green canopies, windows, and propellers. I don't know if this color scheme works as well in my opinion, and the minifigures are honestly basted in nightmare fuel. But these are not the villains. The Stingrays are. Built out of black, old grays, red, and trans-neon green parts brings a darker tone to these sets for sure, and the various prints really give the build some extra evil details. These might be some of my favorite villainous divers as well, sporting an almost medieval style helmet. Like all the other Aquazone sets, plenty of chrome accessories were included like knives, arrows, and crystals, as well as a variety of ocean critters, and very random bushes. By 1999, Aquazone came to an unceremonious and fast end. Wrapping up concurrently was another underwater exploration sub-theme, LEGO Town Divers. Released between 1997 and 1998, this short sub-theme of LEGO Town focused on the more realistic aspects of underwater traversal, research, and of course, a wee bit of treasure hunting. These divers also sported yellow ships like the Aquanauts and Hydronauts, but the plethora of new part molds helped give this theme a distinctive feel. There were a handful of large underwater bases across the Aquazone theme, but LEGO Divers really embraced the sense of exploration with base plates of stickered rocks, fossils, and other hidden secrets scattered across the sea floor. Besides the subs, various vehicles like boats, trucks, and helicopters appeared across the 12 release sets, and I think that helped make the theme feel as realistic as it does. For a sub-theme that is over 25 years old, I think these sets look really nice, thanks in no small part to the variety of specialty pieces. LEGO didn't return Under the Seas until the 2002 sub-theme of Alpha Team, Mission Deep Sea. This time, a team of secret agents were underwater fighting against Ogle, another super evil villain attempting to mutate sea creatures and control the world's oceans. Our heroes once again rock yellow and black ships, but exclusive parts and new molds help differentiate this from themes of the past. Ogle has a black and red sub, and this time the singular large underwater base of the theme, but I think the large mutated creature builds stand out the most to me. This was the first time we really saw large, brick-built underwater creatures of any kind in a LEGO theme, even if they were all mutated. Luckily, there's a new theme releasing just around the corner featuring plenty of deep-sea creatures for us to get our grubby hands on. LEGO Aqua Raiders. Not to be confused with the aforementioned Aqua Raiders, Aqua Raiders released only 7 sets in 2007, but I believe the impact from this short-lived theme was big enough for LEGO to validate going all in Atlantis a few years later. As expected, our diving heroes are once again repping yellow and black submarines, but this time fighting much more varied creatures of the deep as the Bermuda Triangle ancient treasure hunt rages on. These giant creatures included an anglerfish, lobster, tiger shark, crab, and squid, sporting dark but varied colors, fantastic prints, and some great builds that still hold up today. The vehicles are also looking better than ever, with sleek designs and unique shapes that set them apart from other underwater themes. If you want a closer look at all 7 Aqua Raiders sets, I highly recommend Cheesey Studios' Aqua Raiders Retrospective. I'll leave the link down below. It's easy to pick a side and say that Atlantis is a deeper and more fleshed out LEGO theme than Aqua Raiders, but I don't think that's fair to say. These themes had different stories to tell, different limitations placed upon them at the time of development, and vastly different goals in the first place. I commend Aqua Raiders as a great but short-lived sub-theme, and thank it for being the final, massive stepping stone to the glory that is LEGO Atlantis. In September 2009, a Portuguese LEGO magazine shared the very first hint of Atlantis. Translated into English, it reads, "Destination detected." In 2010, LEGO dives into the ocean's depths, a mysterious universe filled with unknown aquatic creatures and buried treasures. An old legend emerges. Finally, we have made it to LEGO Atlantis. Adding on to the concepts introduced in Aqua Raiders, our team of underwater explorers once again battle giant sea monsters of the deep as they search out a new location, the lost city of Atlantis. At last, LEGO stepped away from the yellow and black submarines after 15 years, separating the Atlantis crew with red and trans bright green ships. The crew themselves are also outfitted with new helmets and excellently printed legs and torsos. Besides the big creatures, minifigures of squids, sharks, mantas, lobsters, and others guarded their treasures from the Atlantis divers. A large part of this theme centered around finding the 6 collectible keys, which would open the portal of Atlantis. LEGO's slick trick to entice kids to expand their Atlantean collection. The main story of LEGO Atlantis was featured best in a 21-minute animated movie, released alongside the first wave of sets on Cartoon Network, and creatively titled LEGO Atlantis, the movie. I rewatched this movie on YouTube while writing this video script, and it's not particularly good. As an adult, it's incredibly easy to look through the thinly veiled story and see LEGO's incredibly obvious methods of showing off as many sets as possible to entice kids to spend big. But as a kid, it worked, man. I totally ate this shit up. The story is fittingly simple for this short of a feature. The Atlantis crew battles deep sea creatures guarding the Atlantean keys, which they then use to open the portal to Atlantis. The movie was definitely a nostalgic rewatch, and I'll leave a link down below if you'd like to check it out for yourself. But just don't get your hopes up for too deep of a story. It was specially crafted to sell LEGO sets to 6-year-olds. The actual lore people have assembled from this theme is bewildering. Brickipedia has a dense write-up on the full story of LEGO Atlantis, and it sounds like the insane babblings of a crazed fan theorist. Just for fun, I'll read the last couple sentences from this fantastic passage. After receiving an unknown source of help, the 5 crew members defeated the Guardians and helped rescue the city from darkness, and return the Golden King to his rightful place as the ruler of Atlantis. However, in a master plot to enslave mankind, the alien commander abducted the king and used his magical trident along with Amset-Ra's magical treasures in an attempt to overthrow Earth and rule the world. However, the plan failed, but a new plan was hatched to travel back in time and unleash an army of dinosaurs on the city, which resulted in the Dino theme. LEGO was doing a lot of crossover stories between their original themes in the late 2000s and early 2010s in LEGO Club Magazine comics, which resulted in some truly silly marketing alongside some of these sets. If you were convinced to start buying Pharaoh's Quest sets because the alien commander kidnapped the Golden King in his UFO and used the powers of Amset-Ra and the 6 golden treasures to conquer the world, then good on LEGO's marketing team for a job well done. The LEGO Atlantis line released in 3 main waves. I'll go over them very briefly here because this lengthy history lesson has gone on long enough, but if you'd like a closer look at all the LEGO sets from this theme, the YouTuber Nico uploaded 3 in-depth videos featuring all the sets from the entirety of LEGO Atlantis. I'll leave those links down below as well. In January of 2010, the first and largest wave of sets would drop, featuring many of the most recognizable and nostalgic sets of the theme. Going from smallest to largest, Wave 1 included the Small Manta Warrior and Sea Jet sets, a cool orange crab in Monster Crab Clash, the Rock Raider, Captain Ace Speedman's personal sub, the imposing Guardian of the Deep, a wheeled vehicle, the Seabed Scavenger, the transforming Typhoon Turbo sub, the largest terrain build from the wave, Gateway of the Squid, and last, but not even close to least, is the Neptune Carrier. The main ship for the Atlantis crew, the Neptune Carrier, is an incredibly memorable set, and certainly one of my favorites of all time. This first wave featured 5 of the 6 collectible keys, as well as the first appearances for the awesome Manta, Shark, and Squid Warriors. By summer of 2010, the next wave of Atlantis sets had reached store shelves. This time, only 5 in total, but some of the largest sets yet, including the Deep Sea Striker, an awesome Scorpion build, the Shadow Snapper, a Toys R Us exclusive, the Undersea Explorer, a fully transforming mech-car combo, the large Atlantis Exploration HQ, and finally, the majestic Portal of Atlantis, protected by the Portal Emperor. The Portal set was the easiest way to get all 5 keys in a single purchase, and the skeletal Aqua Raiders diver was always one of my favorite details of the theme, tying some of that underwater LEGO lore together. Atlantis returned for its 3rd and final wave in winter of 2011 with 5 additional sets, this time with a different mission, finding the ultimate treasure, the Golden King. These sets changed up the formula a bit, color swapping to a red and trans yellow scheme. I will always be more nostalgic for the trans bright green Atlantean look, but this last wave of sets added a lot of new and worthwhile ideas to the theme. This final wave included the Ocean Speeder, the Silly Seabed Strider, a personal highlight of the theme, Angler Attack, the largest ship of the wave, Deep Sea Raider, and another one of the highlights of the Atlantis theme, City of Atlantis, a proper send-off for the Atlantis story. This set included the Golden King, as well as the 6th Purple Atlantean Key. Also included in sets across the wave were new enemy minifigures, Hammerhead Warrior and the Barracuda and Lobster Guardian. I should also mention the 4 polybags that were released across the theme, Neptune Mini Sub, Octopus, Piranha, and Mini Sub. With that is the complete history of LEGO's underwater themes and LEGO Atlantis. A few other sets released since then in the Deep Sea Explorers sub-theme of LEGO City, but they never brought that same Atlantis attitude, being more of a realistic LEGO Town Divers successor. Now that we're all on the same page, let's finally jump into my LEGO Portal of Atlantis MOC. Being only the 2nd video on my YouTube channel, I really want to knock your socks off with this build, and maybe even earn your subscription. I attended Brickworld Chicago for the first time last year and was incredibly inspired to build some sort of large MOC of my own. There are so many LEGO themes that I'm a huge fan of, but I was really jiving with my idea for a large Portal of Atlantis build. After Brickworld, I drew up a quick pencil sketch of my rough outline, and this was really the only planning for the build at large. I knew I wanted there to be a large portal in the middle of a temple at the top of the display, with a variety of vehicles and large creatures based on sets from the Atlantis theme. The model really developed over my year of designing it with real parts, but most of the basic shapes I was going for are represented in this first sketch. My only other bit of planning was some digital designing to figure out what I wanted my piece palette to look like. Since my parts collection isn't that notable, I set out from the beginning with the expectations of spending a crap load of money on pieces to fully realize my vision. In contrast to the animated movie, I wanted this build to be bright and colorful. I wasn't really basing my vision of this build on the movie or the insane LEGO comic lore, more so basing this MOC on my childhood imaginings of these awesome sets. Since the plan from the get-go was to bring this build to Brickworld Chicago 2025, I knew I had to build it in some way so the entire build could be disassembled, transported, assembled, repeat, etc., and so on. I ended up designing this massive cubic meter build to separate into 26 modules, with a wide variety of sizes and fragilities. I think it would be best to show off this build module by module, roughly in the order I assembled them, and I'll be sure to show off each section with and without the full range of LEDs on display. Without further ado, I present the Portal of Atlantis. Module number 1 was my playground to figure out all of my basic building techniques across the MOC, like sand, rocks, stairs, ruins, and the main path. There are lots of jagged edges and ugly parts on the back of these builds, and that'll all be hidden away once these modules are connected. Many of them evolved in shape and detail over time as spaces and terrain needed to be filled, so you'll definitely spot a lot of weird looking stuff before they're combined. The sand in this whole MOC is entirely built on its side, primarily to have a smooth texture compared to the rocks. Building sideways also helped tremendously with the mass amount of vegetations and the lighting for the MOC, but it was a bit headache inducing throughout this entire process. Building sideways is not easy, but I'm so glad I did it, as it looks miles better than studded tan base plates would have in my opinion. Looking at more of the specific details in this section, it primarily features 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Manta warriors with a variety of golden weapons. In actuality, this variety of weapons was included because I ran out of tridents. There are a ton used throughout the display. The warrior in the front is holding the green manta ray key, each of which will be spread out across the build, and duplicates will be displayed around the main portal. These manta rays are quite common in the Atlantis theme, and I'm glad I got to show them off front and center. On the other side of this ruin is an Atlantean diver with the full lighting rig attached. There's also a treasure chest hidden in the plants, and a statue with the Portal Emperor's armor and a key. 2 of the ruin builds are angled to give this build some extra detail, and I'm glad it was included here, but it makes this section quite fragile. The staircase is also quite fragile, being built out of jumper pieces, but I wanted the staircases going up the front of the build to be constructed at different scales to give the illusion that the model appears bigger than it actually is. This is the biggest staircase of the 3, and I'm quite happy with it. The school of fish swimming in front of this build is another favorite of mine, constructed quite simply with mechanical arms on a large transparent bar. I think this is an incredibly effective technique, and I included schools of fish all over the rest of the MOC. Moving to the nighttime set, with superb underwater lighting, this model sits in the front center of the display. With the LEDs turned on, I think this really adds something to this module, and you'll see that throughout the entire build. The green manta key is illuminated, as well as the Atlantis crew member, sporting a small green LED inside the helmet alongside with the 2 warm white lights. I'm very happy with how this front section turned out, and solidified my building methods quite a bit here. This really is the blueprint for the rest of the build. The gazebo is the second module, probably the most fragile sand section in the build, with the gazebo inset into the ground at 25 degrees and a large hole cut out for the crashed Aqua Raider's deep sea treasure hunter. Attached to the side of the gazebo module is a small section I call the sand triangle, a filler bit to properly angle bricks for an upcoming cave to butt up against. The gazebo itself is a pretty simple build, and the large hoard of treasure with the variety of golds is one of my favorite details across the front of the display. There's a couple of turtles swimming nearby from the recent LEGO City Explorer diving boat, and Captain Ace Speedman taking a break with an Octan coffee mug up top. Fitting the trident into the top of the gazebo really sells the Atlantis look, and I'm really happy I was able to make that work. Hidden to the right is the crashed Aqua Raider ship and a matching diver skeleton. This is a modified version of the original Deep Sea Treasure Hunter set, making it a bit more sleek and color coherent, as well as removing some of the bits and mounting it at an angle under the sand to sell the crash look. Sitting next to the ship are the rest of the accessories from that set, another treasure chest with 2 red snakes, as well as a small rock build with trans green seaweed parts nearby. The short blue and pink coral is built using 2x2 flowers and flex tubes of different sizes, and I use that technique all over the MOC. This module also has 2 Atlantean divers running away from a soon-to-be-revealed creature of the deep. The gazebo and sand triangle sections lie next to the ruins at the front right of the display, rounding off that front corner. This section has quite a few lights as well. All 3 divers have the green glow in their helmets, and I'm so glad you're still able to see their faces with the micro LEDs carefully fitted in there. The Aqua Raider's diver has a flickering blue light, which definitely helps bring some attention to this otherwise fairly hidden detail in the build. The gazebo itself has some of my favorite lights, with a bright white strip up top and a light in the bottom of the treasure chest to illuminate the variety of gemstones within. This mech was the first Atlantis vehicle I created for this display, and I love the way it turned out. This is not really based on the Undersea Explorer set from the theme, more my own take on a red Atlantean mech. I set out with two goals when building this. I wanted it to have a cage in front of the window because I thought it looked cool, and I wanted it to be a squatty mech. Think Big Daddy from BioShock. The main body is built around this cockpit and was by far the most difficult part of the mech to figure out. That minifigure is never coming out. The mech legs are super clean, with red Technic panels and wheels filling out the shape. The drill on one arm and the light and hand combo on the other give this vehicle some utility, and the arms are fairly posable, just a bit heavy and slowly fall down in some positions. Of course, the whole thing is wired with lights. I don't think the boards on the back look too bad. I definitely tried my best to hide wires and boards across the build, but wiring the lights was the last thing I did when assembling Atlantis, and I really didn't want to take too much of the build apart. The mech doesn't have a spot on the display quite yet, but I still want to show off the lights on this thing. They really make this MOC stand out that much more. The white lights are so satisfyingly bright, as if they're actually serving their job to be able to expose the darkness of the sea floor. The green wrist light and cockpit light are so nice, and the blinking red light adds so much life to this static model. This build gave me immense satisfaction at the beginning of the Atlantis project, and made me so excited to continue building. I had never successfully built a Lego mech before, so I'm quite proud of this little model. The anglerfish, included in the angler attack set, is one I knew I wanted to include from the very beginning. This was one of my dad's favorite Lego sets, and one I was quite fond of as well. This one was very challenging, as I was primarily using two colors I had limited parts available, and was built with studs facing in a lot of different directions. I wanted this fish to be longer and more accurate to the real thing compared to the set, and I'm very satisfied with its final shape. I'm quite happy with the face, including the two large blue eyes and the golden tooth hidden among the massive spread of pointed teeth. The face and angler's light was the most important part to be recognizable, as I would later be exposed facing out of a cave, and I think I was able to accomplish that. With the lights on, it only serves to make the anglerfish all the more menacing. The green light is meant to blend in with other divers' helmets so we can snatch them up for a lovely snack, and those bright blue eyes are wonderfully frightening. I'm a big fan of this build as well. The biggest section yet is the Angler Cave, my first foray into how much money I would be spending on light bluish gray bricks across this entire build. The anglerfish doesn't seem that long until you decide to fully enclose it in a cave. This section is basically as big as a modular building and features some of my most detailed rock work. As I continued to build this giant MOC, I had to find ways to build more efficiently in both time and money, as well as building these sections to be more stable as they increased in height. That being said, I'm very pleased with the shaping around the cave, as well as the cave itself. The black bricks on the back wall with tall plants covering the seams and the corners gives the cave an awesome illusion of depth, especially with the anglerfish chilling inside. There's another Atlantis diver with a small, handheld propulsion craft mounted to the side of a cliff, with a fun little mermaid temple included in the back of the section. With how annoying and part intensive the rocks ended up being, my philosophy was to include more Atlantean temple structures, as that meant less rocks I had to build, even if this statue is basically on the back of the display. The top sand platform is pretty flat, with gaps in the plants for the mech and another big Atlantis creature. Hidden in the back is a dark blue dolphin from the LEGO Friends Sea Rescue boat set, and a bunch of ugly wires. Ugh! The mech, and especially the anglerfish, are not easy to remove and reinstall on the module, but I wanted to show off a closer look at both those builds. Putting those builds in place and sliding the large cave into its spot pretty much completes the front right of the display, and turning those lights on are all the more satisfying. That Atlantis diver with the little jet doohickey adds so much to the side of the build, and the lights on that anglerfish are so flippin' nice. The blue and green glow add so much to the cave, and the divers attempting to make their escape adds a great amount of story to this part of the build. The mech looks so sweet up there, and those white lights are still a highlight of the mech, even more now that they really are lighting up the surrounding scenery. Atlantis is coming along swimmingly. The shark module sits opposite the front right ruins, with many sharks forming around a ruins build of their own. This ruins section has a much more stable raised base, and some toppled columns and arches are scattered on top. Featured in the center of this shark swarm are both the shark and hammerhead warriors, defending the red shark key. One Atlantis diver is barely escaping the jaws of a hammerhead shark, and another diver from the LEGO Agents line is loitering nearby. I also hit an Animal Crossing crab on the ruins, another theme referenced for the long list. Connecting this build to the front of the display more clearly defines the main path in the middle, and this thing really is starting to sprawl out. There's only a couple lights in this section, the red key and the single diver's helmet, but they serve their purpose well. The full length of the display is getting quite wide at this point, and I think this was the first section where I really felt I found my groove. The techniques were solid and consistent at this point, and I was fully confident in where the project was going. at least in the sand bits. The original plan was to wrap a bottom layer of sand around almost the entire build, but I pulled that back to around 2/3 of the base by the end of the project. The small cliff front is pretty simple, but fills an important hole next to the first staircase and behind the shark module. This small temple staircase combo is topped with the gold ornament piece from the Space Police 3 Brick Daddy's Lunar Limo. I also scattered a couple of sea creatures across the facade. The small ruin build is more interesting than a blank wall, so I think it serves its purpose well. Hidden behind some sea plants, I think this cliff section looks even better. Of course, there's a bright light to add a bit more depth to the small ruin. This module also being at an angle with the angler cave helps vary the front of the facade, but already I'll be needing a very oddly shaped section to stabilize and flatten off these front cliffs. I call this module the Sand U, meant to bring together the tops of the area around the bottom staircase before staircase number 2 can be added. There's another Atlantean crew member calling in a golden treasure chest he's discovered, with a blue Lego Belleville bucket filled with sand toys and other accessories nearby. I also added a classic Lego octopus and a little bright light orange octopus hidden away on the other side. Removing the top ornaments on the staircase, the Sand U can fairly snugly slot into place. There's only one light on this section, in the diver's helmet, but this module isn't meant to be that large or detailed, just fill the gaps. And I think it does that so satisfyingly. Based off of the Deep Sea Striker build from the second wave of Atlantis sets, this Scorpion was such a fun creature to oppose my Atlantean mech. The orange and black combo is one of my favorites from the theme, and using the stickers makes this build so much cooler. I more referenced real Scorpion images when creating this build, and in my opinion looks miles cleaner than the original playset. It's fragile, but I think it gives off the creepy vibes of seeing numerous bug legs, and I'm so proud of the shaping of the Scorpion. He's definitely one of my favorites. I can very carefully put him into the display, and he's got no lights. Maybe glowing eyes could have been fun, but I like the print he's got on there, and it glows already opposite the mech in this awesome head-to-head battle. I love the way these two builds look on this ledge, and I think these builds really set the bar for the rest of the submersibles and creatures to come. With that, the second main level of sand in the front is finished. Onwards and upwards. Growing even taller, this is staircase number 2. Obviously the bottom of this build will be hidden away by the lower staircase, but this is generally how the back or interior of most of these cliff sections look. A bunch of walls and large bricks to cover as much area as possible, and to be as stable as I can make them while spending the least amount of dough. This ugly tower is topped with staircase number 2, a slightly smaller staircase using snot techniques to switch up the scale a bit. Instead of a blank cliff wall, I included a small cave for the cute Lego lobster and his collection of numerous treasures. Staircase number 2 slides right into place behind the Sand U, and to make our lobster's collection all the more apparent, I took the light in the back of his cave so it wasn't too hidden away. The illusion of depth that both the staircases give is working as excellently as I had hoped, and I'm so glad I decided to split the staircase into 3 receding sections. The Minecraft cave is a module I knew I wanted to create since the beginning, as I had previously designed a half-chunk Minecraft ocean MOC a few years ago. That build was sacrificed for Atlantis parts, but it lives on in an even better form in the back of my Atlantis display. This section is entirely built with tiled off cubes to be as Minecraft as possible. Hidden away is a small ocean monument gate, surrounded by various Minecraft-themed plants. There's plenty of mobs tucked in here, a drowned, glow squid, and 3 axolotls swimming around Alex, who's sporting a turtle shell helmet and gold sword. It wouldn't be a Minecraft section without the ores. Both coal and gold ore are exposed on the stone surroundings. This module locks into place behind the Angler Cave and next to the Mermaid Temple. This section does include some lights to represent the glowing sea lanterns, and I think it works okay. If I really wanted it to glow, I probably could have used some transparent bricks instead of the solid ones, but this is part of the back of the display, so I don't really mind how it turned out. Moving back to the front of the build, here's my plant-filled Mission Deep Sea module. This section features remakes of both the AT Jet Sub and Ogle Drone Octopus sets from the Alpha Team theme. The Drone Octopus has been modified quite a bit more, given that the original set was basically just an octopus. But I think this remake effectively improves on the concepts from that original set, and actually allows the skeleton drone minifigure to attach to the build. The AT Jet Sub has also been modernized in a sense, mostly adding as many small pieces as I could. Detail! These two are chasing each other through some small ruins, and there's a large flat area within that'll make a great spot for a large ship to sit later. There's another small Atlantean statue in the back, and a shrunken gazebo in the front corner. This little build is topped with the rare goldfish accessory from the City of Atlantis set. This build slides into its spot right next to the shark module, and rounds out the front left corner of the display. This section has quite a few lights, entirely on the 2 Alpha Team watercrafts. The ogle drone octopus has some striking red lights for the eyes, and of course, I had to illuminate the skeleton helmet as well. The jet sub has 4 lights, 2 for the thrusters in the back, and a warm white and blinking red light attached to the mounted gun. The LEGO Agent's diver wasn't placed in the earlier shark module for no reason. He's helping out his LEGO spy brethren by lining up a shot on the ogle drone. I call this one the Big Temple. It might not really look that way in certain angles of the facade, but I can guarantee you, this is a big temple. Elevated atop a rock wall with a spacious interior, the Big Temple used a tremendous amount of the white pieces I had. I wanted the interior of the temple to be as symmetrical and patterned as possible, and at the right angle, all the columns give an excellent effect. Hidden in the back is a treasure hoard with C-3PO's head, and a mounted trident on the back wall because Atlantis. Filling this module with plants and coral pleases me greatly, and oh boy, wait till you see the lights in this thing. Swimming past the opening is another Atlantean diver, and an arched facade is attached to the side of the temple. Like I mentioned earlier, more ruins means less rocks. The fish weaving in and out of the columns give this section even more depth, and the top corner felt like a great spot for another school of fish. Reaching new heights is the sand section on top, with a small white gateway and dark red octopus. Hanging out in the plants is the awesome Squid Warrior, an undisputed highlight of the Atlantis theme in my humble opinion. He's got a strong grip on the 3rd Atlantis key so far, the yellow turtle key. Sliding this big boy into place, this section adds a lot of shaping to the left side of the MOC. But the lights? Yes. I keep saying a bunch of the parts of this Atlantis build are my favorite, but this one's my favorite. The details inside are much more visible with the lights on. I'm very pleased with this module. Of course, the diver and key is lit up as well. You may think this build is getting pretty tall, and I'd certainly agree with you, except for the fact that we're only halfway there. This little guy is the middle block, and yes, I'm counting this as a module. If you've got a problem with that, spend a year building your own portal of Atlantis MOC. This little block slots into place behind staircase number 2 and helps align some of the bigger sections from the inside. It may not look like much, but this is incredibly helpful to line up those modules consistently. And for all the folks who want to know how the sausage is made, here's your look at the back of these tall sections. Moving on, Module 15 is a bit of a boring one, but its emptiness is for good reason. The next module takes up a lot of space. This one has it all. Sand, rock, plant, fish, snake. Way to go, Module 15! The sand rectangle sits right behind the mission deep sea chunk, further filling out the left side of the display. Now you can see the full area needed for Module 16. And let me tell you something, this one's my favorite. What good would an Atlantis MOC be without the king ship of the sea, the Neptune Carrier? I call this the UCS Neptune Carrier, and I truly believe that name is well deserved. I'm just gonna say it now. I think this is the best LEGO build I've ever made. The Neptune Carrier was one of my favorite sets as a kid, and I'm so proud to have done it justice. This ship is double the size of the original. Twice as wide, twice as long, twice as high, and 4 times the volume. To understand the scale of this massive build, the large rounded red molded parts above the large propeller were originally used as the rounded bottom to the ship. It is substantially larger than the set. The whole build is elevated on 2 clear stands. I don't think a clear LEGO assembly would have been stable enough to hold this heavy ship. My main goal with this build was to replicate the shaping for the original and smooth out as many parts as possible. Starting at the bottom, I made sure to include the large propellers on both sides of the front of the build. Unlike the set, no vehicle actually comes out of the ship, but I replaced that hole with another pilot diver behind that large green window. You'll be able to see in there much easier once the LEDs are turned on. 4 big lights are attached to the front above the lower cockpit for scavenging purposes. I'm really happy with the bottom section, and I think the shaping is as satisfying as the original set. Moving up the front, the shaping here was equally important. A lot more detail has been added to the engine cutout on each side, and I added a random assortment of windows and holes to make the sides all the more interesting. Mounted on the outer side is the manta ray from the Neptune Carrier sets with very few modifications. I'm not really sure what improvements I could make to this awesome little guy. I had to make sure the side panels were still accessible and included some more fun details in there. It's much easier just to rip the panels off to see all the goodies inside. There's a diver chilling with a wrench next to his computer and a full loadout of 4 helmets and 4 sets of flippers. Up top is the large green canopy, one of the trickiest parts to solve on this ship, but I'm so pleased with the final result. 2 loose red arches help create the satisfying shaping of the canopy, and all the windows can be removed fairly easily. There's a full crew of 4 divers inside, a guy playing with some levers up front, our navigating gal with the Atlantis map, the captain of the ship with his large steering wheel, and a joyful diver in the rear looking at all the pleasant LEGO scenery. The large propeller is made up of a bunch of silver bionicle parts, and I couldn't forget to include the small submersible attached to the back of the carrier. You've all been patient enough, it's time for some lights. With something like 25 LEDs, the wiring in this ship was a tremendous challenge, but my god, just look at it. In all seriousness, this one is my favorite. Taking a closer look, the diver in the lower cockpit is much more visible with the green illumination above. The 4 bright white lights in the front light up so much of the shark module. I really like the way that looks. The canopy up top is lit up with green, as well as the side windows, all 4 interior helmets, and the diver on the back. Green and red lights are littered across each side, and there's a couple more white lights throughout. The only real problem with this ship's placement is its blockage of the big temple module. It's still visible at quite a few angles, but probably not as much as it should be considering how much effort I put into that section. I'd like to think of it as a deserved reward for folks who really study all the details on the build. Regardless, I'm so damn proud of this ship. I love SpongeBob, and I knew I wanted to include numerous references to the show somewhere in this build. Of course, the highlight of this module are the jellyfish of various sizes, but that large one really takes the cake. Plankton is chilling nearby, and I had to include a small red crab as an ode to everyone's favorite greedy business owner. Behind all the plants, there's also an angled ruined pillar. There's another SpongeBob reference I knew I wanted to include in this section, and if you're a real sponge head, you may already know where I'm going with this. Under this suspiciously round rock is the dwelling of one Patrick Star. I made sure to include all of his living necessities: a sand couch, sand coffee table, and sand TV. Of course, what good would Patrick's house be without the starfish himself? The SpongeBob module lines up right behind the sand rectangle, and you best believe these jellyfish light up. I know I keep saying how much I love so many of the details on this build, but come on, these jellyfish are awesome. The pink lights are so unique among the assortment of lights across the whole MOC. Of course, I made sure Patrick's rock is accessible while his section is in place. Here's another big module: Big Cave. I wanted to do something interesting on the back of the Atlantis build, but I also needed to create a large block that was strong enough to support a lot of weight on top. This was my solution. Flying by out front is a slight rebuild of the ever so recognizable diver's submarine. As previously mentioned, the build and exclusive part molds do the set wonders, and I really had no reason to replace these excellently shaped pieces. There's also another town diver swimming alongside the sub. The ruined facade in front of the cave and repeated archway design does a good job of obscuring plenty of interior detail. Inside, there's an Atlantis crew member squaring off against the swamp creature from the Monster Fighter line, a couple Minecraft pufferfish, and a dark green gator waiting to chomp on some unsuspecting victims. Of course, I had to load the cave up with plants of all kinds as well. Using that small middle block, the big cave slides right into place on the back of the build. Like the big temple, lights are not only a necessity to see all the details, but also add a tremendous amount to this build. The diver sub has a couple interior lights, as well as the 2 lights on either side of the canopy to hunt for treasure. Besides that, the diver's helmet and swamp creature's crystal help light up the inside of the cave to great effect. If you thought there weren't enough temples in this build, here's another one. I call this one the Gated Temple, and I bet you'll never guess why. At some point while I was building this MOC, the front facade was going to have 4 staircases, but it would have cost quite a bit to make this large build that much taller. Instead, I chose to use the 4th staircase I had built as part of this temple, and I think the results speak for itself. Inside is a plethora of random trinkets and treasures, and what good would an Atlantean temple be without a trident? There simply had to be some Super Mario representation somewhere in the Atlantis build, so I've included a Cheep, an urchin here. Also gliding by the gated temple is a diver and underwater drone from the same LEGO City Explorer diving boat that included the turtles from earlier. This build lines up behind the big cave and big temple, completing the rock facade on this lower back corner of the MOC. It only felt right to light the inside of the gated temple to show off all those goods, and the City Explorer drone stands out quite a bit with the bright white lights. One more lower sand section remains, then the expansive sand floor will be complete. This uniquely shaped sand section was necessary to fill out the bottom of the MOC with style, and although there aren't many hidden details, I think this module fills its role excellently. In a reference to the LEGO movie, there's a police gator arresting an Atlantean diver for attempting to steal some loot off the table of treasure. Like the rest of the build, there's a plethora of fish and other creatures scattered throughout the plants as well. Slotting this module into place and turning on the lights confidently brings this back corner together. The flashing red and blue is a must for the police gator, and the town diver's submarine looks so cool behind the variety of plants. Taking a wider look at the left side of the portal of Atlantis MOC, it's really coming together well. I'm equally pleased with the back of the build as I am with the front. It definitely wasn't necessary to put this much work into the rear, but I'm so glad I did. The corner cliff's job is to be a cliff, in the back corner, with a small hole for my power cord to extend out of. And it does that well enough, being a cliff, in the back corner, with a small hole for my power cord to extend out of. Next! This filler cliff section has a few fun references in it, including Aquaman swimming near the Crown Temple, displaying a chrome gold crown, and my redesign of the Aqua Zone Stingray's Recon Ray. This rebuild modernizes the shaping of the ship a bit, while keeping all the most important original details like prints and accessories. I should also mention the propulsion bubbles in the back, built using clear superhero stands. The Crown Temple is sitting atop a layer of sideways bricks, necessary to fill the odd gaps in the module's placement on the back of the display. There's only one light in this section, illuminating the crown inside the temple. I really like the way the Recon Ray is suspended above the cliff wall. This is certainly not the last Aqua Zone reference to come. Only a few more modules left, and it's time to bring Atlantis to even higher heights. The final staircase, staircase number 3, is the smallest one yet. This one used sideways tiles similar to the last. Also included is a Viking shield and a much smaller path than the previous layer. A lone Atlantis diver is defending himself from a soon-to-be-featured evil deep-sea creature. This small section does fill an important hole in the facade, and of course, the diver has a small green light in his helmet. In my opinion, this triple stack of receding staircases works really well. It does its job of tricking the eye into thinking this build is much bigger than it is, and I think it was the most important part to make the scale of the much larger temple at the top stand out among the rest scattered around the build. There's 3 more sections left, 2 of which are some of the biggest in the whole MOC. The central cliff is one of the most structurally important parts of the build. It needed to even out 5 different modules staggered at various heights, hide a large USB dock responsible for powering all the LEDs in the MOC, and be stable enough to support a lot of weight on top. What I came up with was this monster of a section, an incredibly odd shape to fill this gap. Because I had to build it around the rest of these modules, it was one of the most tricky sections to complete. The main highlight here is my redesign of the Guardian of the Deep set, and I'm a big fan of how it turned out. The yellow and black color scheme is super slick, and the eyes are a personal favorite detail. The shark is supported using a bunch of clear bars at an angle, and they definitely droop a little bit, but they get the job done. I mostly trust its stability. Jar Jar Binks meandering somewhere around the build was a must, and I've included him here swimming near this additional sand landing. Also scooting along the back of this build is another Aqua Zone diver, this time a rebuild of the Aqua Shark's Shark Scout. This is another favorite sub of mine on display, going for a much more sleek version of the original. The rest of the build is rocks, and a bunch of blank white ruin walls, so I didn't have to build even more rocks. The back wall was maybe a little lazy, but it's in the back and behind the shark. I'm much more pleased with the white wall in the front, setting up the foundations for the large temple above. Getting this large module in place is not an easy task, as every lower module has to be in the exact correct spot for everything to line up. But properly sliding it in place and turning on those lights is oh so satisfying. The shark is so cool with the LEDs, absolutely a worthy inclusion. The back of the build is pretty cohesive, and greatly exciting to see it grow higher and higher. Staircase number 3 looks perfect nuzzle in front of the rock face, but the real glamour shot is seeing the whole lower 2/3 of the MOC assembled. The next module is the Portal Temple, and this is one I knew I had to do justice. As the main centerpiece of this build, it also ended up being one of the most difficult to complete. Sitting on top of some peak fiction lies my grand Atlantean centerpiece, the Portal Temple. A large 4-columned temple facade with statues littered up top is surrounding the Portal of Atlantis, featuring all 6 keys of Atlantis, 5 surrounding the portal, and the 6th on the center pillar of rock between the 2 divers. Of course, the Portal Emperor had to be included somewhere, and what better place than in the portal itself? One of the details I wanted to include from the beginning was a screen inside the portal to create a cool swirling effect, and that goal made this module much more difficult. I decided to use a cheap Amazon tablet, but that came with a few challenges. I needed it to have a charger attached, and I needed it to be accessible, but closed. I'm happy to say I was able to accomplish all of the above. The tablet can be accessed by removing a school of fish, taking off a large cliff panel on the back of the build, and opening another small panel with a hinge to the side. I also included a cord extending through the bottom of the temple build, and a small hole on the opposite corner to help push the screen out if it gets stuck. I'm able to get the tablet out of there a majority of the time without removing the back panel. Closing it up is quite easy as well. Going back to the front, I made sure to include a lot of treasure littered around the portal. Above are 2 white statues on either side of the Golden King, Atlantis' most prized treasure. I'm so glad how the front of this temple's facade turned out, and just wait till those LEDs turn on. Another reason this section was so difficult to construct was because of the massive lime green and black squid attacking an Atlantis sub suspended on the side. I'm so proud of this squid, and I think the action at the front of the sub gives an expressive suggestion of movement, with the bubbles exploding out of the front of the ship as it's being squeezed to its limits. Like a real squid, I made sure to include all 8 arms and 2 tentacles, and the money spent on those small ball-jointed 1x2s was well worth it. The sub itself isn't the most interesting, but I think it serves its purpose well for being a sinking vessel under attack. A few smaller air bubbles are leaking out of the back, and the plethora of long transparent rods are trying their absolute best to hold this thing up. I made this whole area inside the rock face and within the sub as stable as I possibly could, but there's absolutely a ton of sagging happening towards the front of this ship. I mostly trust this thing not to fall off, but I definitely scare myself every time I lift up this module. Really, the only way these transparent rods will fail is if a majority of the cliff somehow breaks, or if the pieces literally snap. Regardless, their effect works well. Littered around this module are plenty more details, with a gang of stingrays swimming by up top, and the Barracuda Guardian parading around the blue squid key. Luckily, another Atlantis diver is hot on his tracks. Around the back are a couple more figs, like the Deep Sea Explorer diver from the LEGO City sub-theme, the mermaid from the LEGO movie series, and a duo of yellow Wave 3 Atlantis divers. I was originally planning on including a Wave 3 schemed vehicle or two for the back of the MOC, but I wanted the vehicles to be more cohesive than that, and I kinda rushed parts of the build a bit to get this video done before Brickworld Chicago. I still made sure to include a few of these divers somewhere on the build, as it wouldn't tell the whole Atlantis story without them. The back is truthfully a bit boring, but I'm fine enough with how it looks. Pun intended, placing the portal temple on top of Atlantis makes me bricks every time. It's probably 98% stable. This is the only section that requires 2 people to assemble, so my roommate Luke hopped in to plug in the 2 USBs and sneak the wires inside the build before the portal temple seals up the top. Turning on the screen, this really satisfies my need for an attention-grabbing centerpiece. I love the way this portal turned out, and the 5 keys surrounding it look so dang cool. I made sure to include a bunch of white lights inside the temple to illuminate it a bit more, and I had to include lights for the giant squid and sinking sub on the side. There's a blinking green light on the front of the ship, as well as red and green lights on either side, and glowing eyes for the squid. The divers scattered around the build have lights in their helmets as well. This section of the build gives me so much joy. The portal brought this centerpiece to life as much as I'd hoped it would. One more module to go, number 26. The top sand features all the references I felt were missing from the rest of this build. An original Aquanaut from the Aqua Zone line. The hella expensive Lobster Guardian minifigure protecting the 5th orange crab key. And hiding behind some plants at the peaks of the ruins is my take on the Seabed Scavenger. A classic Atlantis set from Wave 1. I reused a lot of the same large molded parts from the set, like the wheels, angled supports, and tools up front, but smoothed out the shape of the body quite a bit. A cheery Atlantis diver is also chilling inside, even though he doesn't have much sand to drive on whatsoever. The top of the ruins does a good job topping off this build, and the real satisfying part comes from placing it at the top of the MOC. Illuminating the lights marks the completion of my Portal of Atlantis build. Taking a closer look up top, the orange key had to be lit up like the rest. The Seabed Scavenger has plenty of lights on both the top of the ship, as well as the interior, and additional white lights up front. Zooming out though, the Portal of Atlantis really is complete. When I started this project, I absolutely was not confident I could complete it in a year, but I really set my heart on it, and I'm so proud of what I've been able to build. This far exceeded my expectations from the start, and I can't really believe I made this whole thing. I've never built a MOC over probably 3,000 pieces before. I've never lit up a build, and I've never dedicated this much money or time to an art project in my life, and I'm so happy I did. If you're lucky enough to have the money and dedication enough to find the time, you might be surprised with what your hobbies can turn into. Building Atlantis pretty much has been my hobby for the last year. Besides scripting and editing this video, it'll be interesting to see what my life looks like post-Atlantis. As I've mentioned plenty of times, Brickworld Chicago was my main motivation for finishing this build, and I'm so excited to share that I'll be in attendance again this year. If you're anywhere near the Chicago area and available on June 14th and 15th, it truly is an awesome show to attend. Come say what's up if you see me there. This time, I'll be bringing this Portal of Atlantis MOC and my complete collection of all 36 mini-kits from LEGO Star Wars: The Complete Saga. If you haven't seen that video on my channel, I highly recommend it. But if you have and are excited for more, I have some excellent news. I'll be releasing a full Part 2 video building even more mini-kits from LEGO Star Wars the video game next Saturday. Not to spoil too much, but I spent the big bucks in the name of accuracy, and there's some awesome new ships to build as well. Before this video ends, I wanted to take one last chance to thank the staff at LEGO and the design team behind the LEGO Atlantis theme. Know that your contributions to our young imaginations have lived on for so many years, and there's still so many fans of this unique, inspiring LEGO theme. I'm so proud to have brought my full vision of LEGO Atlantis to life, and I couldn't be more pleased with the final results. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more large LEGO builds like this at some point in the future. Happy 15th anniversary LEGO Atlantis. I'll see you all next time.